This is a 3-part series. This is part 1. I have amazing people. They're super inspiring, super engaging, super informative, and they're all my friends. I can't wait for you to hear from Ben Branch, who is the former Congressional Black Caucus PAC director, Jean Brown, who is the NAACP social media manager director, content creator, and of course, Congressman Andre Carson. Just gonna have a nice organic conversation with these folks. I'm so excited for you to hear what these brilliant minds and beautiful hearts have to say. So make sure you tune in. You do not wanna miss this video. Lila, let's talk. I cannot wait for them to share some of their insights related to getting out the vote and why being more politically engaged at various levels is so important. So feel free to share this video to others who might be interested. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, all these buttons below. Lila, let's talk. Basic terms. What does the CBC do?
CBC PAC, to which I was the executive director of for 6 years, essentially the political arm for the CBC. Literally just a caucus within the US House of Representatives and the United States Senate. That is a member-funded organization. They present a budget, oftentimes they are the conscience of the Congress. Meaning that a lot of times when Congress goes too far or there's benign neglect with respect to things in the African American community, the CBC collectively as members of Congress, as one collective body within the House of Representatives, comes together and sometimes blocks legislation, sometimes advocates for legislation, but regardless, they oftentimes stand collectively. And not a monolithic group, because you have 54 members that represent over 25% of the United States population, have different priorities and different agendas, but collectively as one body, they do wield a lot of power within the United States House of Representatives. But then there are 3 essentially umbrella organizations. You have CBC Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit arm. You have the CBC Institute, which is a generation of political leaders. So if you talk about state, local, and federal campaigns, so it's how to engage into media on a campaign, how to do direct mail, and all these different facets, and that's something that they do every year as well. So, and they're 501c4, so essentially like a think tank that people often tends to be synonymous with is CBC Week.
Yes, I was going to say, everyone knows usually about CBC and CBC Week, which
is
not
annual legislative conference. Yes. Annual legislative conference.
It's not just parties,
It's
actually, and there's actually amazing workshops and a lot of ways to network. I don't know if a lot of people know about that.
Look, and let's be clear, as much fun as people have, that's probably one of the hardest weeks for us.
Absolutely. As a staffer, you talk about the annual legislative conference, you have hundreds of policy forums, brain trusts, issue forums that have discussed just a myriad of different issues. The gift and the curse about this year is that ALC has been spread out pretty much over like a month and some change.
Entire month.
So it's no excuse. And just today, Congressman Carson had his hip hop panel with Damon Dash, Angela Rye.
Shouts out there. AC.
Yes.
Shout out to my peoples, my cousins.
That's another one of my big brothers and mentors that I gathered.
And so there was a really, good conversation that he had on, hip hop and hip hop and their engagement with young people as it relates to politics.
So I just think we're programmed to be slaves and not know it. And we're programmed not to fight and not to know how to fight. And that's the issue. And that is what needs to be dealt with now. They're not going to teach us how to talk to each other. We got to talk to each other. And we have to provide that economic stability or that escape so that they'll listen. Bottom line is, if you broke, you're not listening to nobody but the plug. If you ain't talking about getting me some money, I don't really want to hear it.
Where should we be sending people to be able to be fed? Because the reality is that if
where they go to escape, movies, music, we're in sports, everything that we're programmed to distract us, the same exact outlet they've been using to distract us is the same exact outlets we have to use to focus, to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Game Dash Networks, Roland Martin Unfiltered. That's where you go. Angela Rye's IG, Andre's IG. That's where we send them.
hip hop and politics.
It's
and
evolving.
It's evolved, but you know what? It's growing and growing, and I think it's a great way to reach the younger demographic, people, and using music as a way to kind of bring people into the fold. I think a lot of musicians now are being more politically engaged, entertainment, the NBA, you know, all these different folks. So why did you think that was like an important mechanism to kind of create some bridge between industry and politics?
Well, I mean, when I was younger, actually I'm a failed rapper. I was in several groups, performing, opened up for, you know, Ice Cube, Too Short, Da Brat, Above the Law, Do or Die, a few other people. It was through my artistry that I loved hip hop. I had a love and fascination for words and kind of the truth telling that you see reflected in the artist. And I ran for the school board and I lost. And I was still, you know, helping my grandmother with her political efforts, but it wasn't until I ran for Congress, I was on the city council, that my opponents were referencing the fact that I used to rap as if it were a bad thing.
Yeah.
So that's my way of not only showing my love and passion for hip hop, but embracing who I am. And I believe that you shouldn't be ashamed of who you are or your past. You should embrace who you are, because if you do it, your enemies can't use it against you.
Yeah. The thing I want to ask you, Gene, is about the NAACP. And we had kind of conversations about this when we first met regarding, you know, my understanding of the role of the NAACP now, because, you know, you still have like a lot of activists, you have like thousands of chapters, but like what is the NAACP kind of doing now, particularly with like the Black Lives Matter movement? How are they kind of still our leaders and kind of, you know, this positive change and, you know, improving the advancement of colored people?
But you know, when people say, and I've never put it on the people. It's about us owning the narrative of our story, telling the story so people understand that, yo, now we're not old,
right?
We're wise. You know what I mean? We've been around long enough to be wise, but don't get it twisted. Like, I'm a representation of the NAACP.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I travel with the president.
Yeah.
So if that's, if you want to get a glimpse of what that looks like, and then we've got Dominic Whitehead and Jamal Watkins over civic engagement. They're not old, but they're running one of the most important departments of the NAACP. Again, Tiffany Law, like we're not old, we're wise. Betsy DeVos and company trying to reopen schools in Florida and send and literally stop funding for these schools if they don't reopen in the middle of a pandemic. Dun, 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 dun. NAACP lawsuit to the rescue, and that's just a small thing to the larger point of what we're out here doing.
Now is a really, really important time for people to vote, particularly those who are maybe disappointed. Biden's a great candidate, but maybe for those folks who were hoping for other candidates in the Democratic Party, why should they kind of show up, and why is it so important right now?
Well, voting impacts every aspect of our lives. If you're driving down the street and stop at a stoplight, that's an impact of the city council making a decision. If you're going to school, or if you're sending your children to school, if you're a parent, that's a result of legislation. If you're paying taxes, that's a result of legislation. If you're complaining about the road you took to go to the mall, or the bridge you cross, there are policymakers who make decisions that impact our daily lives. If you talk on a cell phone, if you're having a Zoom call, there was legislation put in TAC dealing with broadband networks that help improve our lives. So whether you like politics or not, I would at least encourage everyone to participate locally.
Okay, great.
So for me, I'll let you get into the robust, but for me, it's easy, man. It's like, even as we, and I mean, I hate to say stuff like this, but like, as we watch the world burning right now, so to speak, a lot of the issues that we're looking at are local election issues. So it's like, you know, we're talking about the president, and, you know, I speak for myself and not for the organization that I work for, but you know, we talk about the president and what's going on, but in reality, when you look at a George Floyd or an Ahmaud Arbery or a Breonna Taylor or the, you know, a plethora of names that we've gotten just in the last couple of months, and you wonder why people aren't being arrested and why protesters are being harassed. And shouts out to Portland for that move that they made the other day with not allowing protesters to be tear gassed. But when you look at those kind of things, those are not presidential issues.
Right.
Those are local election issues. So it's like, yo, if you don't want to be a part of the process because you don't get the highbrow stuff, it's like, yo, no, this affects your day to day.
Exactly.
Cats are going back to school. When you're talking about putting your children in harm's way, putting them actually in a classroom around, other children and other students, other teachers or whatever, and you think about what's happening in the world in regards to just the coronavirus, that's local stuff. That's not, you know what I mean? Like, and the president will try to chime in when he, wants to deflect, but it's like, no, talk about your school boards, talk about your mayor, and so
your sheriffs.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do you think, Ben?
And piggybacking off what he said about a lot of the local elections, if you look at places like, I don't know, like Ferguson, Missouri, places like that, like you have city council races that are decided by, tens of thousands of votes, if not less. And we got more Facebook friends. You got 10,000 followers on your IG. Like, I mean, and I mention that because, these are the people who are going to appoint the folks who are going to prosecute. Sheriffs, Commonwealth attorneys, school board, like these are the people who will make the fundamental decisions to prosecute prosecute the police.
realize that a sheriff is an elected
It's
position.
an elected position.
I don't think a lot of people realize that.
These are elected
that's
positions.
exactly what we would-
Small elections that have way more consequences. And the thing about it is, oftentimes people talk about this sort of disconnect between what they see on TV on the federal level with the presidential and Congress. It's like you literally can touch.
Yeah.
You can literally touch your federal elected officials. There are town hall meetings. There's all kinds of civic associations and civic, things that are happening around people on a day-to-day basis that they're just, oblivious to. And so I feel like, it's essentially the essence of a campaign is not just simply everybody just saying the same thing or doing the same thing. It was in Augusta, Georgia, and I was campaigning and knocking on black people's doors down there for John Kerry. And John Kerry Edwards, right? And I remember I'm down there with my Washington, D.C. talking points. I'm talking about No Child Left Behind and, Social Security and everything. I'm like, it's 20-some-year-old, and I'll never forget that because it's like, they didn't give what they cared about? Gay marriage. They cared about gay marriage. It was like, I'll never forget, it was like, I was like, what? This is not even like, and I'm in my little D.C. bubble. If people don't relate to it, it don't matter. It doesn't matter. That's why the local thing is critically important.
You know who you would go to get the Augusta, Georgia talking points? The NAACP.
Okay.
Exactly.
Because we're on the ground everywhere.
Yeah.
And the thing that people don't realize is like, okay, you think about something, you think about it from a national level. When you think about it from a national level, you're typically getting the DC folks, maybe some New York folks, maybe some LA folks, but the rest of the country, they're not thinking about the national level because, and of course, the president now is a reality TV show.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, there are a lot of things that are covered nationally that everybody pays attention.
To get back to the importance of voting, like I said, it's just like, there's local, there's state help. We're here in Virginia. Virginia just decriminalized marijuana. How many people, I grew up here, so many people got weed charges that, now that in the state and the Democratic state legislatures just decided, and here's the other irony, is that a lot of state legislatures, a lot of them may be year-round or some 6 months, but some of them, literally, these legislative sessions are. In Virginia, for example, every year the state legislature is either 45 days or 60 days. Literally, major legislation is being determined in 6 weeks or 2 months. And that's happening across the country. A lot of these legislatures, will be in session and so I say that because, we're on limited time, but also there's so much power that can happen, if people just sort of, engage.
And Virginia's crazy. Shouts out to all my folks. My family lives in Chesapeake. But I found out, like, when you get out of prison, we all got a family, locked up or whatever, doing whatever. And when you have to pay for the time that you were in jail.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
I'm like, yo, that's nuts. Like,
Can you imagine if you were innocent and you had to do that too?
But just the thought about you're making money off of me while I'm in jail.
Yeah.
and then you're making money off of me when I get out.
And they have
nuts.
some of the most archaic laws still in the books.
As far as at the federal level and potentially having Kamala Harris be the VP, how big is that? What does that mean to you and your family, seeing a Black woman and an Asian woman in the White House?
I think it's great for Salima to see a Black woman. I think it's great for the South Asian community to see that it's possible. I think it's great for women in general to break beyond the psychological barriers and the glass ceilings that have been in place for centuries. And I think it's a step in a direction, one, toward the browning of America, if you will, and also the fact that we're in the age of women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your time.
I love that.
Like Kamala Harris being nominated as a VP candidate is nothing short to the magnitude of what Black women in politics have been able to do. You know, I mean, I think, you know, especially in my time, I mean, literally you've seen so many, you know, women of color that have been the backbone. I hate hearing that shit, but it's the truth about being a backbone, because Black men need to support, you know, Black men need to show and prove to the polls as well. But, you know, for so long, Black women have been the backbone of the Democratic Party. And so, I mean, I think it's not
Since they were able to vote.
Since they were able to vote. Right. But, you know, I just feel like, you know, it's not only is it symbolic, because I'm way beyond the symbolism point at this point. It's in terms of, like, you know, somebody that can actually speak to HBCUs, fraternities, sororities, being a Black woman. I think that is critically important. But again, I mean, I feel like it was a bold choice, and it spoke to his commitment to, you know, the African American community, particularly Black women. So I thought that was a good thing. And so hopefully, you know, it resonates on November 3rd, but I felt like it was a good choice.
I mean, for me, it's like, and again, I think in content. And so in regards to if I ever have a daughter, right? Like, it makes more sense to me in that regard. It's like, I get nauseous or sick, whatever, every time I hear the first. I'm like, one, I'm 33.
Yeah.
Two, it's 2020. The first? Like, we're still talking about the first. And the fear of the next.
Yeah.
Barack was the first.
Yeah.
I don't see another Black president in sight.
Well, look at the backlash that happened after, right?
And so when it comes to that, I'm very excited about Kamala Harris, VP Kamala Harris, being in the White House. I'm very excited about that, but I want more. I am.
We need to build that pipeline. Like
Yeah, I'm over the excitement, and I can see the win for Black women. A lot of the Black women in my life were a part of that campaign. That was like, listen, Joe, you playing around with these names, and you're taking a little bit longer than we would like for you to choose whoever you need to choose. So I'm with that, and from a visual standpoint, I get it, and I completely understand why it is what it is, because again, it's the first. But I'm more concerned with all right, she gets in there, yo, what we gonna do? Exactly. And what does her being there mean for the culture? Like, it's a larger conversation, but it's like, we are excited because you're a Black woman who will potentially be the VP in the White House, right? I saw a Black man get there. I remember the excitement. I remember that moment when he won the first time. And it was like, oh my God. I want it to mean something after. And that's what I'm thinking about. Like, okay, Kamala Harris, she wins, she gets in there. While you in there, is your Blackness a part of what we're talking about? And if you know, if that,
gotta keep her accountable.
if that is what it is, and that's
Absolutely.
it, that's it.
We
We
gotta
can't get excited about, you know what I mean?
Just symbolism.
Yeah. November 4th, we still need to be
Right.
all right.
Right.
Remember Queen? Remember that? Right. Remember that thing we were talking about?
Because if it doesn't reflect in diversity in the administration, and you know your policies that you're putting forth in your first 100 days, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
And again, we as a culture do that.
Yeah.
Because we've taken so many L's. W's excite us. But sometimes a W is just for show, and then we're left hanging.
And it's one of those things where,
Not saying that she's going to do that, because I want to be clear.
Yeah.
I don't think that Kamala Harris is going to get in there and leave us hanging.
Right.
But I'm just saying we have to be on point in what we want
And it's okay for
and
us
what
to
we
do that
ask for.
for each other,
Right,
right? It's not
right.
like, well, that's a black person, so I'm not
So I'm gonna just let them slide. No,
right,
no,
exactly.
I need this. I need
Right,
that.
yeah.
I got some brothers that's locked up for some weed. I got some brothers that's locked up for some weed charges in places where weed is illegal right now. I mean, legal right now. Come on, we gotta.
and it's yes, it's one of those things where I think I saw someone on social media that was like joking, but it was like every presidential election they always ask, "Are you better than you were 4 years from now?" And I saw somebody said, "Are you better than you 4 years from now?" I'm gonna let you answer that. Put on your mask first, and that's the point. I mean, I think we've never seen a time in our history where it's literally a life or death matter.
Right.
About who we elect.
I hated that slogan, by the way.
It was terrible.
Before now, Beyonce said it, and I was like, oh, okay. But like, vote because your life depends on it. I hated that, and it didn't resonate with
I
us.
remember Vote or Die. You remember that Vote or Die? Like,
No, I was in New York with Puff.
Yes. But I mean, but it's literally like
Right, like it's the real deal right now.
yeah. Where black people are disproportionately dying and getting sick from the coronavirus, which is crazy.
Yeah.
The most diabolical and masterful things at the same time. Again, I don't know who's going to view this, but is tricking poor white people into feeling that they're superior to black people.
That's all they have to hold on to.
Because if poor white people realize that
You want us, baby.
Yeah.
They don't care about you either.
they don't care about you either,
They're excluding you.
that's their biggest fear.
Look
That
at
is
welfare.
the biggest fear. The biggest fear.
They'll trick you to believe that we the most on welfare.
I'm reading this book called Dying of Whiteness right now. It's really, and the whole premise of the book is like literally poor white people in a lot of these areas that are like, the biggest Trump supporters and Tea Party folks, is that the fact that they actually are dying, physically dying for a support of an ideal of freedom just to spite liberal, aka black, liberal ideas.
Yeah.
And they reference in Missouri how they are one of the most pro Second Amendment states, and like soon after they passed this these bills back to local elections.
That's right.
These bills to make it so much easier to pass gun legislation. How many white males died from suicide? Same thing with Obamacare in different states. Like, it's Obamacare, and you're literally dying for lack of access to health care.
Right.
Which goes to a bigger thing as we talk about getting back to politics, is that I feel like, one of the things that people aren't really understanding, we're dealing with White Walkers. Pardon me about White Walkers, but no, we're not dealing with that was a whole generation of people who are willing to die for their ideals. And when you start talking about we don't even have the luxury to be apathetic about voting and about the engagement in the political process, when you're dealing with a whole swath of people who are literally willing to die. I mean, you look at what's happening with people carrying guns, and my man, it's real out here.
Right.
And so I feel like when you even talk to black women, say, "Yeah, I man made my vote." Are you serious?
Right.
Now again, we can debate who to vote for everything, but I'm talking about in terms of our fundamental right to be in a process. It's literally life or death at this moment. And so I really do feel like we aren't really gauging the magnitude of what certain demographics of our population are willing to do to preserve their freedom. And that's something that I really feel like we need to kind of talk about. I could talk all day, census, where federal funding goes.
Jesus, the census is so important. It's very important. And we don't. So here's the only caveat, right? I don't even remember when I learned how important the census was. And so as we talk about these elections and different things, it's like, why aren't these things taught? If it's such a process, such a patriotic process to do these things, why don't we learn these?
Yeah, can you guys explain the importance of census? Because I know a lot of people get in the mail, people knock on their door, and then you brush them off. Why?
And I don't.
Let's take a break because this is gonna cut off.
Oh, okay.
We'll be right back.
I was just trying to say, commercial.
Make sure you stay tuned in. We got to pay some bills. Coming right back.